Ezra, I'm not gonna try to teach you anymore. If all I do is try, that means I don't truly believe I can succeed. So from now on, I will teach you. Look, I may fail, you may fail, but there is no try.
I understand, Master.
Welcome to the 42 Podcast, where we discuss life together, looking for answers to life, the universe, and, well, everything else. Here are your hosts, Rob and Lindsay.
Good morning.
Good morning, Lindsay. How are you?
I'm good. Despite my laggy start this morning, I am very well.
Yet somehow I feel like I'm a little more awake than you.
Oh, you beat me to the punch this morning. I was expecting you to say, 9:15, 9:30. So I'll bluff. I bluffed and I said, I'm ready whenever you are. And then you're like, okay, how about 10 minutes? I'm like, oh, yeah. Crap.
Yeah, I'm getting to that point with the kids waking up and, my sleep patterns now that I'm going from not being a morning person to just not being someone who enjoys sleep at all anymore. So, like, last night, I just kept waking up, like, every hour.
Ugh.
And so at, 6 this morning, I was like, screw it, I'm awake. So I came down and I was editing the episode and getting that finished instead of doing that this evening. And yay, I'll be productive and have coffee and just remember that I'm entering into the time of being an insomniac again.
Oh, boy.
Such is life. But, so I did something for you this week.
I know! I'm so excited.
It's mostly done, okay?
Okay.
It's all built, done. I need to, later this afternoon when the sun's out, I need to put a final coat of stuff on it. So it's getting closer and I need to finish the stand. And then it's in the mail too.
You're making me a stand too?
Yeah, you have to have a stand.
Oh my gosh.
I
didn't realize how talented you were.
This isn't talent. This is monkey push button.
No, you painted it too.
Yeah.
Every artist is always like, no, it's okay. It's okay. It's not, but that's because you're an artist and it comes naturally to you.
I went to the backyard and shook some spray paint cans and went, so yes, I painted it.
Seriously? All right, please tell the audience who was on bated breath, which is the weirdest expression ever, dying to know what it is. I'm sure they could guess. Maybe they could guess, considering how many Star Wars episodes we actually did. But
so one of the things that I got into, I guess the backstory before I hold it up to show you, one of the things I got into going into the pandemic was 3D printing. Where it was, with everything shut down, with a lot of uncertainty, with 90% of what I was doing being Zoom-based, I was going stir-crazy. I had a little bit of extra cash from some investments and put it into a 3D printer. And that's what's over my shoulder every time we Zoom, that's my 3D printer. Back there this morning, it's running a print. And one of the first things I did with the 3D printer, and I've talked about this before, was I built Han Solo's DL-55 blaster.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the reason I wanted that 3D printer is because I just wanted to get back into model building.
Yeah.
So I occasionally scroll through and I find a model and I'm like, ooh, I want to build that. And I found one that I wanted to build.
How can you... That is beautiful. And for the record, it is the dark saber from The Mandalorian / it comes from other episodes too, but oh my goodness, that is gorgeous. So you did that with a spray can? That didn't take like hours with a fine tip? That just looks like you worked so hard on it. It looks so good.
So yes, it took work. Well, let me back up another level, I guess. there's an interesting philosophy in this I think we can talk about, and it'll be a great kind of continuation and point of discussion. But when I was a teenager, I loved building model airplanes. Building the back then it was the A-10 Warthog, building B-17 Flying Fortresses, building P-51 Mustangs. If I could build it, I wanted to try it. But I always got aggravated, and it's a little kind of subtle subtext. I would begin building a model, and then I would screw it up somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a perfectionist streak that runs in me. And when I would screw it up, I was done with it. So I never really did well with actually completing the models because it was, no, I overglued and melted half of the wing or something. So I always got frustrated. I always got angry with that. And as I've gotten older, I've gotten better with the screw-up side of things, not being a perfectionist, but embracing them.
Mm-hmm.
So, this.
Mm.
I'm going to hold it closer to the camera. Do you see that black streak right there?
Yeah.
That's actually a break. When I was doing the parts fitting for this, before our final assembly, that little plastic tab piece broke. And it was frustrating. But instead of, no, I'm going to reprint that part all over again, and that was a 2-hour print for that part, I leaned into it, and when you look at how it's painted and what it looks like, you'll see that that little break actually looks like it's more of a story to the lightsaber than a piece that broke. It looks like it's a piece that broke in battle. And
that's cool.
What I've learned is leaning into those imperfections in not just, the model building stuff, but even life. Is kind of leaning into those imperfections because they're character building. So yeah, you look and you see something marvelous. I see something with flaws, and all artists, I'm not an artist, see their own flaws in their work. But it's those imperfections that give character in a model, in an artwork, that makes a story.
Yeah.
So
it's really cool. It's marvelous. That's exciting. I'm sure there are plenty of people out there that would love to watch you do that from start to finish on YouTube.
I think when we do this episode, I'll maybe do a compilation of the printed part video, because it's really cool because you watch the part as it just kind of like forms from an empty plate to suddenly there's a part, and it's like, wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
I do this all the time where I'm going to print this, useful household items or something, and I can watch it go. But even then, when I go back and I watch these time-lapse videos, I'm like, that is so cool. And there it goes, it just comes into existence.
I still can't believe 3D printers are a thing.
So before I bought mine, I was following the stuff and, wow, 3D printing technology, it's been around for about 40 years.
Oh.
Do you remember the movie Small Soldiers with Kirsten Dunst? You remember that?
Yeah, yep.
That was a mid-90s movie, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. But they actually show 3D printing right there in the opening scene of the movie.
They do.
It always sticks in my head. They do. Because when they've had their meeting and, okay, we're going to build these soldiers, and then they go into the montage of the toy creation, one of the things they show is, I can't remember the exact type of printing, but you have a vat of resin, and you shoot lasers at it, and the lasers cure the resin. So you can print something in liquid, and they show this scene where they're shooting lasers into this clear goo, and then out of the clear goo rises one of the toy soldiers that then goes through the assembly line. And it struck me. I was like, oh, that is so cool. You can, from nothing something. And so yeah, from that and, following the technology as it's come to something I can stick on a workshop table to...
Isn't that amazing?
Printing models.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Yeah, I texted you yesterday when I finished this. I was like, I'm not standing in my basement with my Han Solo blaster in one hand and the dark saber in another, going Star Wars. It was not having a major geek out moment, running around the basement like a maniac, accidentally breaking my solo pistol.
Oh, yeah, that's so sad. How did that happen? You dropped it?
Sure, I dropped it. I wasn't playing. No, I had it on the workbench table and accidentally dropped it on the edge and the barrel snapped off.
Ugh.
Which is fine. I've actually been thinking about reprinting and redoing it in a harder material, but...
So how much is it? Like, how much does it cost to, for the material to print something like that?
For a spool of material, depending on the material, it's normally about $20, and that comes in at a kilogram, so that's 2.2 pounds. And so your print, it was I need to change the filament, I need to change the spool, but I really want to finish the last of the filament on this roll. Mm-hmm. So there was maybe an eighth of the filament left. Mm-hmm. You know, grand total, your print is maybe $2, $3.
Wow.
That's it. Yeah, it's cheap to produce things, and it's...
Does it cost a lot for the patterns or whatever? Does it cost a lot to buy the...
No. Everything I do normally is off of, it's called Thingiverse. Mm-hmm. And you can tip creators, but everything's posted there for free. And you can find almost anything. I've got a few designs that I eventually want to put up on Thingiverse because I've also been learning how to do CAD. So I've made some designs. There's a garden gnome that has been haunting my family, is the best way to phrase it. My brother stole it a couple years back from my parents' house. Everybody thought it was me because I stole it a few years before that, and so I got blamed for a while. And then when my brother proposed to his girlfriend, who's now his wife, you know, the proposal pictures had the gnome in it.
Huh, that's cool.
So, like a month ago, my brother and his wife moved into a new house that they just bought, and they had the garden gnome out front, so I stole it again. And this time around, what I did is I actually stole it to make scans, 3D scans of it, so I could take it from just being a physical garden gnome we keep stealing to now I can print the garden gnome.
So they come outside and there's like 13 of them in the walkway as they go downstairs for their car.
Like last Sunday, one guy at my church, he and I had been talking about some 3D printing stuff because he's seen pictures of things that I've printed. So what I did is Sunday, while he was up front practicing guitar, I walked by the pew where he keeps his stuff, and I actually tossed one of the garden gnomes I've printed in his hat. And got a text from him later that day, oh, thanks for the garden gnome. So it's going to be one of those things that I'll just use I'll hide them at weird places or
your calling
things
card.
like that. Yeah, well, kind of. This is a neat little story. My grandfather used to make, and he learned it from someone else who was called the Wireman, but he used to make these little Wireman figures. They're about like an inch or 2 inches tall. And everywhere he traveled, he'd have a handful of them and then hide them. And this is something that he picked up from who the original Wireman was, who every time he traveled, he'd hide them. And it's something that I've done where every time I've traveled, or if I have friends or church family who travel, I'll give them Wireman and say, hey, hide this somewhere in your travels.
So cool. That's a great story.
Yeah, I should probably send you a Wireman with the lightsaber.
Yeah, I'd love that.
I'll send you pictures. We'll have to post pictures. I can even post the instructions. I have those.
I wonder who started the Wireman originally.
He's passed now, but there was a summer camp I would go to, we would go as a family. So, I mean, it was my parents, my siblings, my grandparents. It was called Family Week. It was at a camp called Jamonville in western Pennsylvania. His name was Mal Trimble. And when I was a kid, he was old. But he was just this great old guy who, on the porch of Captain Webb, every day, almost every day, after nap time, there was a mandatory nap time after lunch at camp. And after nap time, he would set up with all his supplies and teach kids how to make wiremen. And that was a highlight for me as a kid of one of the highlights for me as a kid of Jamonville, where it was, you'd go and sit with Mao, who is this old guy with lots of gifts, lots of talents. He was an electrician, and he just started learning to make little wiremen. I don't know if he picked it up from someone else originally or what, but we called him the Wireman. This was always neat. He had a picture book. There was a kind of make your own art competition in Pittsburgh of, I don't even remember what it was for or any of this. This was like from the 60s or 70s, but it was a picture book of this art competition that he entered with the Wireman. And he won a boat off of it, so he featured that proudly and talked about that if you asked him. But it was just this beautiful work where he had these little wiremen working in a model of the city, painting a rainbow over Pittsburgh.
Wow, that's really cool.
Mao would do that, and my grandfather would sit with us and make them, and he and Mao would talk, because Grandpa worked in the mills, and there was that shared bond. Grandpa would then make wiremen when he would travel, and he'd hide them, and when we went to Disney in 2016, I made one for Melinda and the kids. They each had a little one that we went and hid. Each of us in our way hid in Disney World. And they had little Mickey ears too. They look like Mickey Mouse, like little mini wire Mickey Mouses. And
That's cute.
there are a couple in Hawaii that I know of. There's one handful of scenic railroads. Yeah, they are all over. You'll probably never find them, though.
Huh, that's really cool. Speaking of which... Hello there. I'm interrupting this podcast, not to sell you anything per se, but to thank you for listening to the 42 podcast and being a part of the experience. Here at the 42, Rob and I love to hear from our listeners and are always excited to hear suggestions, feedback, and comments. If you want to participate, there are a few ways you can do so. You can support us by rating and reviewing the show, and of course recommending us to your friends, family, bank teller, car mechanic, whomever. Do you have something in particular that you'd like us to discuss? Or maybe you'd like to actually be on the show to discuss a particular thing, or set us straight about something we got wrong or didn't fully suss out to your satisfaction. You can email us at badtheologyproductions@gmail.com. I really appreciate your taking the time to include us in your busy day. You said we're kind of got this ongoing project to write stories and read them on the podcast. And I gotta admit that the story that I'm creating, as per usual, it's become this huge thing in my head. And like, it's a big story. So I'm gonna have to figure out a way to just take a chunk of it so that it makes sense. But it's really pretty interesting. How's yours going? You said you had a good idea?
I had a good idea, originally talked with you about it a little bit, of how I'm going to do this kind of creepy thing, and that was based off of a dream I'd had, and I've decided to go away from it, because I also realized I don't remember even what it was, but it was like a TV show or a movie. I was like, that's a little too... Nah, I'm done.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm doing something else
Mm-hmm.
that is an old kind of... It's an old story I started writing and just... Hey, it's a thought. I'll put it down on paper and do a little bit of writing with it.
Mm.
So I'm doing that again, and I'll tell you what, it was kind of funny when I was putting a little bit of background research into that writing and completing that writing assignment.
Mm-hmm.
I pulled up a document that is accessible to everyone now. It's part of an archive. I don't want to give anything away. But I had to laugh because I was looking at it. I was like, oh, those are classified stamps that they've X'd out. And that's kind of interesting and neat. So I might incorporate that into it as well.
Cool. Well, I feel so often like overwhelmed with the sense that I have something amazing to write. It's me and every other aspiring writer in the United States and in the world feel the same sense of, I got something to write and I don't know how to write it, or I can't write it, or somebody else stole my idea, or when a movie comes out or a book comes out and you're like, I could have done that. What the heck's keeping me back? I feel that all the time.
Can I ask something?
Yeah.
Is part of why you feel that way almost this desire to lean into and create something that is perfect?
Yeah. And I think I sabotage myself by giving too much detail in the wrong place, or like spending hours trying to pick a name for a character instead of actually writing the story. You know, I sabotage myself. I know I do that because I want it to be perfect and oddly like put off the actual writing of things.
But what about perfection? And I guess this is interesting because, you know, I hinted at it with the philosophy I had with model building, but what about perfection becomes limiting? And what is perfection?
I think the desire for perfection is limiting because instead of just relaxing and letting the words come, and if something doesn't come out right, just keep writing. It's not time to edit, it's time to write. I wish I could just shut off the editor that tells me, that's stupid. Now what are you going to do? Now what's going to happen? You've written yourself into a corner. You know, so I think the perfectionism inhibits your flow. I think it's constipating creatively. Why? What do you think?
You may have heard this before, attributed to Ernest Hemingway, and apparently it's a little dubious on that one. But write drunk, edit sober.
Yeah.
And you're nodding your head. So yeah, you've heard that.
Yeah. I get that. Just write.
I'm not saying go and destroy your liver, but the idea being let the inhibition go down.
Yeah.
And just write. Come back and edit. And in edit you can fix. But get the words out, get the story out, then make it so it all fits in. And, you know, again, that perfectionist drive isn't bad, but it's what happens because of it. The self-destruction of an idea or confidence or just your ability to do and create. I mean, even in building this podcast last year when we started having these discussions of what could we do? Why does our voice matter? Why is it important? Why?
And it took you a while to push the send button or to push the enter button because you were stalling.
I was trying to be a perfectionist. I was not leaning into and embracing the imperfection. And we've gotten to a point with the podcast where we've done that now, where it's, you know what, there are 2 or 3 episodes ago where I wasn't in my workshop space. I didn't have my good microphone. I didn't have my setup, so my sound was off, which, you know, a year ago when we first started that, when my sound was off, it drove me up a wall. But now sound can't be perfect because, all right, I'm sitting in a basement. I've got humidity issues down here right now that we're, again, post-Ida and still trying to clear up, just the humidity side of it. So I every now and then in this podcast, I cough, I hack, and it's those imperfections that if we let it, it just becomes debilitating.
Yeah.
And arriving and perfecting your craft isn't being on top of your game and having a perfect score. It's being you genuinely over anything else.
And that means you have to produce something. If you want to perfect after, you're going to have something to do, to work with. Well, we've talked about this before, but one of my writing idols is Stephen King as far as his prolific ability to write stuff. He just writes stuff. And granted, a lot of his books he wrote high off of his butt. He wrote super high. Like, I guess, and he doesn't do that anymore. He's been sober for a long time, but like Cujo, he doesn't even remember writing. Which I'm not saying that's what you should do, is just be high or drunk. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying he's not afraid to just sit down at the typewriter or his computer, and he does his 1,500 words a day. He does it religiously, and he just writes and writes and writes and writes and writes and writes, and someone publishes him. So I admire that courage to just write. Just write.
Well, and not just write, but I mean, try.
Ezra, I'm not going to try to teach you anymore. If all I do is try, that means I don't truly believe I can succeed. So from now on, I will teach you. Look, I may fail, you may fail, but there is no try.
I understand, Master.
Let's see if you do.
Throw it out there. Let it stick against the wall. Let it fail. Succeed or fail, succeed or fail. Do or don't.
Try not. Do. Or do not. There is no try.
That's kind of the end result. Do or don't. And where you fail, don't get discouraged. Pick up. Try again. You know, and again, going back to what we created, you and I had how many episodes that we've just ditched? I think I still have the original audios.
Yeah.
Just because we didn't have our balance figured out, what our conversation was. There were moments that were, yeah, we were still friends, but...
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
A little rough. And going back to the beginning episodes, you're like, wow, we've improved so much. We've improved a lot.
We have gotten better, and you know, it is neat kind of going back and listening to some of those and seeing how the arc of our conversations has changed, and each of us has changed. You know, one of the things that Melinda has seen and commented on since we've been podcasting is when I've preached, I have an entirely different voice of how I'm preaching now because of the podcasting.
Wow, that's really cool.
Honestly, it's the confidence from doing this, from being able to have conversations, think things through, and then applying that out into preaching and teaching. And, you know, she's right, because I have some of the old videos of when I've preached, and I have more recently when I've preached, and that's an entirely different person up there.
Wow, that's super
between
cool.
the two. And again, it's just that trying. It's that development of character.
Yeah.
Can I ask a interesting question on, you know, where you're at as an individual and what you see in the people around you?
That's a really general question. I don't understand. Can you get more specific?
I know. Yeah, I can. I will. Maybe a little awkwardly
Okay.
for both of us, but I will have graduated high school 17 years ago. Graduated in 2004. when I look at who I graduated with and where some of them are at now versus where others are at now, kind of that, am I successful? Am I not? The comparison state, if you will. And looking and seeing people who it looks like they have it together. And there's an argument of, well, not an argument, but there is the truth that social media is always best foot forward. And we don't always show the darker sides or the struggles through social media. But do you do that where you look at people you graduated with or have known and kind of, where am I at compared to them?
Yeah. So I don't really talk to a lot of people from high school, but I know of some of their situations, and my best friend from high school, she got into her car in a standard she'd just learned to drive, and she drove to Oregon. Just drove out there with I think she had an apartment lined up maybe, but no job, no nothing. She just drove out there. And I wished for a long time that I'd gone with her, because I kind of thought she wanted me to ask to go with her, and I didn't. And I really regretted that for a while. So I guess the people from high school I saw as being more successful than me, by far. The people that sort of had direction, that kind of knew where they were going, and I didn't. And so, I'm trying to reclaim myself, I think, and look at myself different, but I've sort of seen myself over the years as being kind of a loser. Having missed opportunities, or because of not having courage, not doing things I could have done, or gone places I could have gone, or followed through on a degree. I guess this isn't really what you wanted me to say, but
that's exactly it, because I've come to the place where I've made peace with all of my past decisions, because it's, no, if this or this had changed, I wouldn't have my kids. Mm-hmm. And that's not something that I can ever look at and be like, yeah, I would change that. No, I wouldn't.
Right.
Or my marriage, or, there are little things that I can look at. And Melinda and I talked about some of this last night, where it's little things, maybe drawing the line in the sand here with this person at a different time instead of a month later, but those relationships only reveal themselves in hindsight, in fullness. But I don't know, it's one of those interesting questions that I was asking, because I feel like my perception when I was 19 was that by the time I'm in my mid-30s, I will have this life thing figured out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting in my mid-30s going, was 19-year-old me an idiot for having that perception, or am I an idiot for not having achieved what 19-year-old me thought would happen?
I kind of think, in a way, our society set us up a little bit to think that a job and a career goal would just solve everything about your future. That where you went to college and what you did for a job / career that you had would set you up for life. And now everything's figured out. But I think people equate a job with, your calling. And I think that's a mistake. I think there's a lot more to do and participate in the world that has nothing to do with an income. It'd be helpful because, you're supported by an income to do those things, so you do need a job, and it's good to do a job you like. But I think that this emphasis on a career with a capital C, in part, I think it's a mistake. I have passion. I've always had this extreme sense of passion and justice and a desire to make a difference, but I had no idea how to do that. And I thought it meant a job, a career that would enable me to do that, and that was a mistake. I just felt this sense of slipping purpose. I see now, which sounds so simple, but walking into my kid's school and trying to make sure that other people might have a better day because of me. That, in a very small way, is my purpose for this minute. This minute, my purpose is to try to think about other people and to look for opportunities to make change, to face injustice in those small, tiny ways instead of looking for that huge battleground or that huge cause with a capital C. It's like, what can I do now? And looking for opportunities when they come.
And that's exactly it. It's not in the personal achievements that are grand. And don't get me wrong, those are good. That's not a bad thing to achieve a lot or have great success. But if you have great success and all of the wealth in the world, but you're a jerk in the Starbucks line who yells at a barista who's trying to work their way through college and be or do something great in this world, then you've done nothing.
Mm.
You've brought nothing into this world. Let me rephrase that. You've brought nothing positive into this world. You've just brought more angst, and, that barista's going to remember that jerk and strive to be better or strive to have more influence and power to be that same kind of jerk.
Don't you think it's interesting that, like, I don't know if you have weird memories or like something sticks out in your head and you're like, why? That's so funny that I still remember that tiny thing after all this time. My aunt tells a story of she was a little girl and she was with my grandpa at an amusement park or something, and she tried to hold his hand and he like ripped his hand. He like pulled his hand away and said, "Don't do that." She still talks about it to this day as this devastating thing. But it's such a tiny little thing. It's so tiny, such a small thing. But it reverberated through her psyche and her soul. And she still feels, to a degree, she feels the effects to this day. But I think the converse is also true. When somebody like touches your elbow while you're talking to them and gives you that
life affirming
eye contact that you need, at the moment you need that eye contact, and you can tell they're being sincere, that reverberates throughout your day, if not your week and your month, and makes you feel better, and maybe you'll make different decisions or come to different conclusions than you would have without that tiny little thing. And I think that's where success is.
And no, I mean, you're hitting it right on, because there are things that I look back at in my behaviors, my personality, and who and how I have decided to interact in this world, that I can look back at and I see this negative root. There was a negative experience here. And so I'm not going to do that, because screw whatever situation this was. I'm not going to be that horrible person or that horrible pinpoint in someone's life. Now, it's me. I know I'm a horrible pinpoint in people's lives. I don't intend to be. It's this, when you look back at your past self and you kind of go, ooh, yeah, I was a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who will be like, that dude was a jerk in high school. Total jerk. Absolute, bully kind of idiot. So those moments are there.
Yeah.
And I regret those, and I feel like I've developed out of those. But these little points of, no, I'm not going to do that, or I'm not going to be that way anymore, or just self-reflection, or understanding the roots and causes and developing from that. And, even here in my mid-30s, there are still things that I'm learning and going, okay, maybe that's not the best way to do things, or to think through something. I think that intellectual and emotional honesty that is trying to be a better version every day, seek to bring more grace into the world every day, is what we should strive for. But also trying to understand and have grace. And I guess this is where I feel angsty and frustrated with our society at the moment, because, social media, we all have these wonderful little, black or colored rectangles that, oh, look, something awesome is happening. I'll go viral because you're having a meltdown, or...
Yeah.
And where's the grace in that? What I've seen happening is, we point these rectangles at each other, and then we go on witch hunts of where do they work, report them to their employer. Where do they eat dinner? Go harass them there. And
Zero grace.
well, not only zero grace, but I mean, where's the opportunity for people to walk back and grow and say, yeah, you know what, I
messed up.
I was not my best right there. Yeah. And I get it. Sometimes there are people who that was really bad. That was really racist, sexist, ist in any way. And it's, no. How can we come alongside and help bring someone out of that place rather than just shaming them? Because, leaning into the flaws that we are as individuals, I think that helps us grow, helps us understand, helps us have the dings and dents that are a part of our story, but to be something more authentic and genuine and real.
And I think it helps us respond to other people's dings and dents and terrible days and moments of complete where the heck was your head. I think it helps us have compassion or just forgiveness. Just forgive people. Even though it didn't even affect us personally per se, but just to say, you know what, who knows what they were going through, or who knows what just happened, or who knows what is being taken out of context.
And you ready for this?
Yeah.
I think social media reinforces the perceptions of trying to be perfectionist in life. Because we want to put best foot forward. We want to show that not only do I have the 2.5 kids and perfect white fence and, the perfect well-behaved dog, and my life is together, meanwhile the house is on fire, kind of thing.
There is a Black Mirror episode
Oh.
called Nosedive.
Have we ever talked about Black Mirror?
No.
You and I have never talked Black Mirror.
Mm-mm. It's a show that I find really disturbing. I can't binge watch the show because...
Really?
Yeah, I find it so, in my guts disturbing. Which is good to a degree because it helps you think through things. But, I will watch a couple episodes in a row and then I'll come across one that's ugh. So I stop watching it and and I'll pick it up again when I hear that, oh, this actress or this actor is in this episode, so I'll watch that one. And that's how I ended up coming across this episode, Nosedive, with Bryce Dallas Howard.
Mm-hmm.
Series 3, Episode 1. Nosedive is the first episode in the third series of the British science fiction anthology series Black Mirror. Lacey is a young woman overly obsessed with her ratings. She finds an opportunity to elevate her ratings greatly and move into a more luxurious residence after being chosen by her popular childhood friend as the maid of honor for her wedding. Every encounter that you have in this mini universe, you get rated for it. So the barista that you
yelled at,
yes, they'll rate you. The taxi driver, the pizza delivery person, what have you. Every encounter you have, you're rated. And in order to get into this super nice apartment that she wants, she has to have a certain rating. So the undesirables have a rating of 2.5 or below or something like that. So it's a really, really, really good episode and is exactly about this, about how possibly the way social media affects people's real life and what that would look like if it were sort of taken to the... What's that expression in Latin? It's something absurdum. The ultimate expression of this idea is sort of what the show is about. And do you know Rashida Jones from Parks and Rec wrote it, actually, with this guy named Michael Schur, who I don't know, but Rashida Jones. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
So that episode of Black Mirror is phenomenal. It's one of my favorites.
Oh, cool.
Because I think that's the danger of what social media wants.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the danger of even China's trying to implement a system of social points and behavior modification through groupthink. Effectively is what that does, because it becomes a visible means of quick judgment. Oh my goodness, what did I... Orville. It's like a spoof Star Wars show.
Yeah.
Know what I'm talking about?
Star Trek more than Star Wars, but yeah.
I said Star Wars, huh? Yeah. Yeah, Star Trek. So I watched that, and they did a spoof episode where they went to a planet where, social media was the big influence, and if you got enough negative reactions, you got arrested and mind wiped, effectively.
Oh, wow.
Which, again, was a neat commentary, because I think that's the tipping point we're at right now.
Yeah.
You scroll through TikTok or Twitter.
There was that guy, the CEO of a video game company, and he had an opinion about the Texas abortion law, said his opinion, and he was fired for an opinion that he held. So, it was his private social media thing. It's not like he was picketing in front of anywhere. He wasn't talking about it at work. He was on his private social media thing.
And that's an issue of, okay, well, wait a minute. Are you saying that we're going to just start being done with people who are the opposite opinion of where I'm at?
This is not the first time it's happened. This seems to be where we're headed, is this weird alliance between corporations and the government not wanting to outright censor people, but they're censoring people via corporations and political pressure. So that's really fascinating that that's where we're at right now.
I think there's a political and societal swing that happens. We swing hard into these times of major censorship and groupthink, but then we swing back to these times of more individualistic. And have you ever researched the cycles of history, how there's like a
30-year thing? Every 30 years?
I can't remember the exact time frame, but there's this kind of predictive cycle that they see in politics, in corporation, in how we think as individuals. And for me, this is also very interesting because, Lindsay, what generation are you considered to be a part of?
I'm a millennial.
I'm considered a millennial as well. And Melinda she's even more on that edge of the millennial, from the Gen X to millennial transition. Because when I look at it, I look at who I am as an old millennial, which, have you seen that term floating around now?
No.
There are millennials, and then there are old millennials, and I'm considered an old millennial. You would be an old millennial as well. Looking at that, where I am technically considered a millennial, and between me and my youngest sister, there's 10 years. And she, in that range, is like the young millennial. She's right before the Gen Z stuff started happening. To me, I look at it, there's a world of difference between her and I in how we think, what influenced us growing up. Where in 2004, I'm graduating high school, and she's turning 9. And so, for me, I went out into the world in 2004 and began having those encounters that have shaped me, whereas she's still watching things like Blue's Clues. And so I haven't talked to her about it yet, but that video that just went around Twitter and social media of Steve, and I went back and I watched it. I was like, oh yeah, that's sweet, that's touching. But you have a whole generation of people who are identifying with that because they were 10, roughly, at that age. But then you have the old millennials who, I think I rambled there for a bit, but just those states of transition in who we are. And I think being an old millennial, we have seen what is one side of the pendulum, and we're seeing what is the other side of the pendulum that we have probably helped push that way as a generation. And now maybe wanting to walk that back a bit. Maybe we've gone too far, and maybe it'll be Gen Z who does walk that back. Maybe that'll be us as we get to be the 50 and 60-year-olds who seem to be where the positions of power are within politics right now.
Yeah.
You have some young voices, but it's primarily older voices.
Yeah.
And, you and I being old millennials, do you remember when you got your first cell phone? I think we've talked about this, but do you remember when you got your first phone?
Yeah.
How old were you?
I think I was driving. I think I was driving at the time. Actually, no, you know what? I was in, college. I was in college. Yep.
Yeah, that would have been right around 2004. I got my first phone in 2003, roughly. I was 18. Yeah, and now there are 6-year-olds with phones.
Not my kids.
We're starting to have the conversations about getting the kids' phones.
I don't think so.
My kids can't have a phone until they can pay for it themselves. Maybe we'll help them buy it initially, but they're paying the monthly bill themselves. Because I don't think it's a good idea. I would like to know when they get to places. Get to your whoever's house, and you text me when you get there. You tell me who's there. You tell me how long you're going to be there, and when you're leaving. And I better get a picture.
Oh, jeez.
No, I'm just teasing. I'm being a little extreme, but I want to know when they get there, and I want to know when they're leaving, so I know when to worry. But that's to me, that's why you need a phone, and I don't really want my kids having unlimited access to the internet at 14.
Yeah, the internet is a wild and dangerous place. So we've been talking about getting the kids' phones soon, and part of this is looking and seeing, we're going to do Disney in June. So, for a big number birthday for Melinda is coming up, and her graduation is coming up, so we were able to convince my family, my parents, to, let's do a big Disney trip with everyone in June. And so we'll be there for her birthday and all that fun stuff. But Melinda and I have been looking, and after our last experience in 2019 being in Disney and losing Ray, we've kind of been looking and saying, maybe we should have phones for the kids when we do Disney.
But you can never take it back. Once they have phones, they're going to have them for the rest of their lives.
And I know. We haven't done it yet. We keep talking about it and debating it because it's...
Can you just put them on a leash?
Really... I don't think having a 12-year-old on a leash at Disney is going to be smiled upon. And, Ray's getting to that point of beginning to have and desire more and more independence, and we're trying to, it's that age of tension. You're trying to run the balance of, okay, yeah, you're not an adult yet, but you are beginning to have adult feelings, reactions.
Your hormone and neurotransmitter levels indicate that you are experiencing mood swings, common in adolescence. Diagnosis? Puberty.
Pray for me. So, we want to give him more independence where it's appropriate. And there may be things at Disney where he gets a little more independence. Like,
what about a track phone? What about a track phone or one of those Jason Bourne phones that you can dispose of later or something, like a track phone? Something that way, if there's an emergency, he can call you, but he doesn't get the internet or social media.
That's part of what we've talked about. Now, the other side is that those devices would be controlled. The parental softwares, the monitoring, and all of that fun stuff. But kids are smart. Kids are very smart. There are times that I've had conversations with parents, and their child is figuring out the backdoor ways to get around blocks, and
yeah, I just want to protect my kids from seeing pornography. I want to protect them from that. I want to protect them from violence, really violent things that you happen upon accidentally, from people trying to connect to them, people trying to talk to them. I really want to protect them from that stuff. You can't unsee some things, and I would just...
This has been a change in how I've thought about things. Because I want to protect my kids from that. I do. And I understand that imperative in me. But I can't. I can't protect them because they'll be at school. My first exposure to a nudist magazine was the locker room in 6th grade at school for gym class. Some kid had it in his backpack and pulled it out in the locker room. And as a parent, I can't be there. I can't protect him when he's at school.
But that
with
doesn't
stuff
mean
like
you don't have rules at home because you can't protect them at school.
Right, and we still have the rules at home. We're not like, hey, it's the Wild West, whatever. But what I'm trying to do and understand in my parenting and in what I'm doing in raising my kids is not protecting them and keeping them in a state of naivety, but trying to best equip them to understand.
I'm with you, and I think I do that too, I think. But what do you think that means?
I don't know. And that terrifies me saying that because I don't know. I mean, my best guess is trying to keep and be incredibly open and vulnerable to my kids, not being perfectionist father of I've got this, I have all the answers, but here's my best guess. Let's talk about it. What do you feel? What do you think? And what's going on? Ray is an amazing kid. He's good. He's smart. But there have been issues. And so when some of those issues have come up, it's not, no, you can't, and coming down hard and, drawing a hard line in the sand. It's, okay, well, why'd this happen? And walking through everything that happened and then getting him to see that, oh, wait, there is a hard line in the sand. I passed it and he walks back. And just trying to teach that emotional awareness, I guess, is maybe the best way to phrase that, but I don't feel like that even fits.
Like for me, it's what's okay to look at and what's not okay to look at, and how do you know? That's a big one. And equipping them to understand that, or have a sense of what's good and what's bad, what's right and what's wrong, and then equipping them in that way to make decisions forthwith. I'm a very practical person, and I don't know how to make it practical.
We haven't had this experience. This hasn't happened. But I guess my thinking around it is we're doing our best to protect our kids. Mm-hmm. And the example we've given is the exposure that the internet can bring to pornographic material. In my thinking, when that moment happens, when either of my kids is caught with that material in hand, the initial emotional reaction that I want to feel as a parent is to tell them how wrong and how dangerous that is. That's the knee-jerk, no, that's wrong, you can't, you shouldn't, to create it as a taboo. Drawing that hard line in the sand. But I guess where I'm thinking of it is what I would rather do is rather than lean into that knee-jerk reaction and immediately saying that's wrong, is trying to walk through and process with my kid why they may have that material, why are they looking at that material, and get them to walk themselves back to that hard line and go, okay, well, wait a minute, why is this wrong? Because if I create a taboo, well, then they may work their way around that. They may find a way to justify that, or it may become more attractive. There's a whole level of psychology that happens with that. And so what I'd rather do, not just with the potential exposure to pornographic material from the internet, but just in life in general, just trying to get them to think through, here's what we teach, here's what we believe as a family, here's what Scripture says. Let's talk about this. It's trying to get them to think about and come to the conclusion of, okay, well, wait a minute, here's the line in the sand, and guiding them to that point without knee-jerking and grounding them, getting them to understand it, getting them to understand that there's a reason it's right.
Why is it wrong? I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but does it come down to respect? You know, you wouldn't want anyone to be looking at your sister like that, so maybe you shouldn't be looking at her like that too, because she's someone's sister. How do you break that down? Or is that a conversation for another time?
Boiling it down, it is respect. That is the base layer of what's going on. But there's a lot more to it.
Yeah, I agree. And there's still things that I'm not really sure that I espouse or why I espouse them. So I'm interested in breaking that down.
My perspective and view is very different from Melinda's. And I don't know how to exactly articulate mine yet. It's a little weird and developing, I'll say that. It comes to this. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Made everything, it was good, and Adam and Eve were running around in paradise, but naked. So in the beginning, God said nudity is good.
It's beneficial if you want to do the whole procreate and rule the world thing.
Right. But, you know, what happened? And there's a whole argument on that. And there's a whole, I think, shattered point that, you know, it has the element of original sin and why we've created these tensions and taboos and this whole complex mindset that is weird. And honestly, I think this is, you know, spoilers. I think our conclusion is going to be navigating every piece of this as individuals and parents. It's complex. It is weird. It is complicated, and no one's going to nail it. No one. You know, I get one chance at getting these things correct with my kids, and I may get it wrong. I don't get do-overs on this one.
You know where I'm starting, though, with my kids? Is, you know how kids are playing? And I know maybe this is, like, overly simplistic, but kids are playing together, and they're on the trampoline, or they're doing their thing, and you hear, it doesn't matter which of them says it. Boy, girl, it doesn't matter. Stop! No, stop! Stop! And they keep doing whatever it is. That's something I have a super hard line with, is if someone says stop, fun's over. Even if they're messing with you, doesn't matter, you stop. Like, to me, that is like one of the key things for a boy or a girl to learn, is stop means serious business, and if they are not serious, oh well, fun's over, type thing.
And that's something that we have, you don't respect that boundary with each other, that's a groundable offense in our house. If it's no, it's no. If it's, you know, Mommy and I have said, no, you can't have 45 minutes of TV right now. Okay, that's negotiable in like 15 minutes when we've had dinner or things like that. But the no, the stop in respecting boundaries, you don't do that, that's a groundable offense. You will lose rights and privileges.
Yep.
And wow, we went from model making to...
On that note, I'm done talking to you, so, done.
Yeah, you made it super awkward, Lindsay. I'm out.
All right.
All right. Thank you for listening to the 42 podcast. Please take a moment to like and subscribe, and if you want to join in on the conversation, you can find us on Facebook and Twitter to add your voice to the conversation. Thank you.